Dumelang, welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Clement Mashatile. Great to have you with us here on SABC News. On the show tonight, the Catholic Church has a new Pope. Cardinal Robert Prevost was elected tonight as the first North American Pope and will be known as Pope Leo XIV. He will lead the Church to its next chapter following the death of Pope Francis last month. He addressed thousands of Catholics this evening, calling for peace while paying tribute to the late Pope. We'll be live from the Vatican City for the latest and also look at the potential future of the Church under the leadership of the new Pope. Also on the show, why has the SAPS exonerated police officers who were part of the Presidential Protection Services for Deputy President Paul Mashatile, who assaulted civilians on the NY Highway back in 2023? An internal disciplinary hearing has cleared the officers, resulting in public outrage from South Africans and some political parties. In fact, the DA has submitted a Promotion of Access to Information Act application to obtain the record, decisions and reasons for the acquittal. So we'll speak to the chair of the Portfolio Committee on Police and the union that's been defending the officers, POPCRU. We start the show this evening with breaking news out of the Vatican City. Pope Leo XIV is now the leader of the Catholic Church. He addressed thousands of Catholics a short while ago. This after the fourth voting round. The white smoke indicated earlier today that a candidate has secured the necessary two-thirds majority, at least 69 of the 133 voting cardinals during the secretive conclave. Cardinal Robert Prevost is the first North American Pope. He will be called Pope Leo XIV. For the latest, we're now joined live from Rome in Italy by Trent Murray, who is the SABC News correspondent. Trent, thank you so much for making time. I imagine there's still jubilation there in the Vatican City.
There are many very happy people, I have to tell you. Lots of people smiling, cheering, singing with one another. I think some of them are surprised that this took it was quicker than we first expected, but they all poured here to Vatican City. They're now starting to stream out after, of course, Pope Leo.
All right, so we seem to have an issue there with that line. To Trent, who is our reporter live from the Vatican City. In fact, as you've been watching on the SABC News this evening, he has been painting the picture of what's happened at the Vatican City. We saw Pope Leo XIV greeting thousands of Catholics this evening after being elected in the conclave and emphasizing the importance of love. He says we have to love one another, but also spend some time paying tribute to the late Pope. As we've said, he is the first North American Pope, Pope Leo XIV. And of course, discussions are going to now ensue about what kind of the Catholic Church we will see under the leadership of Pope Leo XIV. We've spoken a lot about Pope Francis, and what kind of leader he was, a friend of the poor, someone who often even made comments about global affairs. He made his views known about the war in Ukraine, appealing and calling for a ceasefire. We know his views about what he said about the war in the Middle East, in Gaza. He's spoken a lot about other policies that he has disagreed with, including the U.S. policy during the first administration of U.S. President Donald Trump around their migration policy. And the question now is, what kind of a leader is Pope Leo XIV going to be? What kind of the Catholic Church is he going to lead as he steps the Church into the next chapter? There's been a lot of conversation about the conservatives versus the liberals. We know Pope Francis has, of course, tried very much to be more liberal in his approach. We know of the comments that he's made, even about the LGBTQI+ community. We know about the efforts that he's made in trying to allow for the inclusion somehow of women in the church, in some of the administrative roles. What approach, though, is the new Pope going to take as he leads the Catholic Church into its next chapter? The question we're asking you tonight, though, is what do you make of the election of the new Pope, Cardinal Robert Prevost, as the first North American Pope? Maybe you're a Catholic, maybe you are not a Catholic, but you follow, of course, what happens at the Vatican City. And what kind of Pope do you hope he will be for the Catholic Church? He gets elected at a time of deep divisions around the world. There are wars. You look at what's happening between Pakistan and India. You look at what's happening between Russia and Ukraine, what's happening between Israel and Palestine. He comes at a time where there's deep division, and a lot will be looking up to him to see what kind of a leader he will be for the Catholic Church. Let's try that line again to Trent, our reporter who's live to us from Rome in Italy. Trent, let's try that again. So you were just telling us that there is a lot of jubilation at the Vatican City. You've spoken to people who are celebrating the new Pope.
That's right, and there are tens of thousands of people here, which is why, as you can imagine, many of the big media houses around the world are struggling with signal. But what we know is that they are here for a reason, and that is because we, of course, now have a new Pope, the first American Pope, Pope Leo XIV, born in Chicago in the United States, but spent much of his time as a priest and then as a bishop working in Peru and Paraguay in South America, very close to Pope Francis. It is thought he is a middle-of-the-road candidate, I suppose you could say, someone who will be able to keep both camps of the Catholic Church happy, the conservative side and the more progressive side. But it is obviously a historical moment for the Church and the world to have its first American Pope. It certainly is a hot topic of conversation here amongst many of these Europeans that are here by virtue of the location. I think it'll take maybe a little bit of getting used to for them, but nevertheless, they are happy, they are smiling, they are singing, they are clapping, and they are taking all of this in with a front row seat.
Yeah, and we saw earlier on, I think at some point I saw the American flag as well being hoisted high from the crowd that was gathered there in the Vatican City. Just take us through what the Americans themselves have said, because some of them have been there in the crowd, if you've had the opportunity to speak to them, and also help our viewers understand what are the next steps now that we have Pope Leo XIV, who's come out to greet thousands of Catholics, who's now been introduced to the world. What happens next?
Well, the Americans are here in reasonably large number, but I think many of them are actually tourists and holidaymakers. I've spoken to many of them, and they've often been quite curious about what was happening and wanting to get a little bit involved. I mean, it's an incredible story for them to now take back and tell their friends and family back home that they were in Rome on the day that the American Pope was chosen. In terms of next steps, I mean, obviously we're going to see Pope Leo XIV work on assembling a somewhat of a leadership team. It's not sort of like a cabinet in a government sense. You won't have ministers and the like, but he certainly will want to have people around him that he can trust and advisors. And then it'll be very interesting to see where he chooses to travel on his first papal visit. You know, Pope Francis made a lot of efforts to try and take the centre of gravity in the church away from Rome and out into the world, with so many high-profile visits to the African continent and to South America and to Asia. You know, where will this new Pope look to travel and look to continue the outreach work? I mean, there is 1.4 billion Catholics out there in the world, and they are spread out, and he'll want to get out, I think, and start to create his legacy by speaking to the people directly.
What are we expecting from him in as far as the legacy of Pope Francis is concerned, and what especially some analysts are expecting that he will somehow position the Catholic Church. I saw that this is someone who spent much of his career as a missionary in South America. He has served as a bishop in Peru. He most recently led a powerful Vatican office for bishop appointments. So there are a lot of people that are expecting that he's going to build on the reforms that were initiated by Pope Francis.
Well, he paid tribute to Pope Francis when he was up on balcony, which the crowd really did enjoy. He was appointed by Pope Francis and was considered quite close to him. But you're right, there are real questions around how he would like to potentially continue the legacy of the former Pope. I mean, what we know, of course, about Francis was that he was quite political in many ways, and he wasn't afraid of increasing his voice on the world stage on controversial issues at times. You know, things like immigration and social inequality and climate change, you know, and that would rub some politicians around the world the wrong way. You know, they would effectively think you need to keep in your lane. As a pope, you should stick to church affairs. Will this new American pope look to do the same? Will he like to, you know, potentially speak about some of the issues that the new American president creates controversy around? Will he talk about protecting migrants and the need to fight climate change? And how will the American president respond to all of that? I mean, you can imagine there's now a huge spotlight on all. These are very real questions that I think we have to ask. Of course, there's some controversial issues within the church itself, blessing of same-sex unions, potentially adapting women into the priesthood. You know, how will he deal with that? He is only 69, so we would expect he will have a long tenure ahead, and so he'll have some time to tackle some of these issues and to try and create his own legacy.
Well, Trent, thank you so much for making time for us. Trent Murray is our correspondent live from Rome in Italy. As we've been telling you this evening, breaking news around the election of Pope Leo XIV. He's the first American Pope. In fact, the U.S. president tweeted earlier on saying it's a great honor for our country. Of course, congratulating Pope Leo XIV. And Donald Trump says, and I quote, "Congratulations to Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, who was just named Pope." That's what Trump said. And he said, "It is such an honor to realize that he is the first American Pope. What excitement and what a great honor for our country. I look forward to meeting Pope Leo XIV. It will be a very meaningful moment." That's what Donald Trump said, as we also watch reaction from leaders across the world. Cardinal Wilfred Napier is the Archbishop Emeritus of Durban, who was part of the previous voting cardinals, and he's joining us live via Zoom. Thank you so much for making time for us, Cardinal Napier. I would imagine, just like other Catholics around the world, you are joyful this evening at the election of the new Pope.
Very happy indeed, and because of I had a working relationship with the new Pope at some stage during one of the synods some years ago. We were in charge of a discussion group together, so I've had close dealings with him. I know him quite well, and I think he'd be a very, very good man to continue the legacy that Pope Francis had already laid the foundations for.
Yeah, and I'm interested in you telling us more about the kind of person that he is. But before we get there, just help us understand the process that's now culminated in the election of Pope Leo XIV. I mean, there are a few people that were a little disappointed yesterday when we saw black smoke coming out of the chimney yesterday, indicating that the cardinals have not been successful in electing the Pope. And after another round and another round and another round of voting, now we see the new Pope having been elected. Help us understand that process. So when there's a failure to elect in the first voting, what does that actually mean? And when there's been a failure for the first or second time, is that an opportunity for cardinals to come together and, I don't know, speak about what needs to be done, who could be best, so that they start consolidating on the numbers so they reach the threshold?
Yes, I think in the last meetings of the cardinals before they went into conclave, there was already a move afoot by people saying, this is the kind of Pope we need, this is what we must work together, this is how we must support him, and so on. So there was already a strong feeling that what needed to be done was that whoever the cardinals were voting for, they should give him a very clear support for the position that they're asking him to take over. And I think with the new Pope now, Pope Leo XIV, that is certainly what he's got a very solid base from which to work going forward.
Yeah. So you, as you've indicated, have had close relations with him. Well, you've worked with him before in the past. What kind of person is he? As you can imagine, Cardinal Napier, a lot of us are wondering, a lot of Catholics as well are wondering, what kind of leadership is he going to provide for the Catholic Church, and what kind of leadership is needed right now for the Catholic Church? Based on what you know, is it someone who is expected to lead the Church on a somewhat different path to that of Pope Francis, or this is someone who's sort of expected to just supplement and take over from where Pope Francis left, in as far as even their approach on different issues is concerned?
I think those are questions that we'll see the answers to in the next couple of months or even years. Because when a Pope comes into office, he's inheriting a whole system that's already been in place. I'll just give you an example. When Pope Francis came in, there were the beginnings of a system to revamp the Vatican finances and their whole economic system. That took a long time, took most of Pope Francis's time to get that committee called the Council for the Economy, to get that one working up to standard. And I'm sure that the new Pope is going to build up on what was already there. There are other areas. He was in charge of the Department for Bishops. So he's had good interaction with bishops over the years that he's been in that position. Therefore, he's not starting off completely without a background as far as dealing with the bishops is concerned. And the third thing is, he would have listened very carefully, I'm sure, to what was being said during the meetings of the cardinals about what kind of bishops, what kind of Pope we will need, the bishops will need to lead them going into the future. And I'm sure he's going to work on all those different strengths that have been laid for him.
Yeah. This election comes at a, suppose, somewhat difficult time for the world. The world is deeply divided. There are wars that are breaking out between India and Pakistan. You look at what's happening between Palestine and Israel, what's happening between Russia and Ukraine. And the late Pope Francis has been clear in making his views known and calling for peace and a ceasefire on some of the wars, particularly the war in Ukraine and the war on Gaza. What can we expect from Pope Leo XIV? Because yes, you are a pope for the Catholic Church, but that's somewhat of a position that is so respected and a role that is so respected by the world. Hence, even when a pope passes away, you see the different leaders from all over the world coming together to pay tribute to that pope. So how important is this voice of Pope Leo XIV going to be, especially during this time of deep divisions in the world?
See, I think he has been part of the discussions that were taking place among the cardinals for the past 10 days. He was also being part of what was going on when they were discussing, I'm sure during the time that they were voting, in between times they would have been talking about the different candidates. So I think he's got a pretty good idea of what lies ahead. Secondly, he has worked here at the Vatican for a number of years. In Rome, he was the Superior General. So he's been interacting with a lot of the people that he will now be leading. And I think he just continues building on the relationships that he had already established at that time. It's very difficult to answer for somebody else, but I would say, given the positions that he had held, he's used to listening and used to doing what he believes he's heard and as the correct way to go forward from what he has been hearing from the people. And I'm sure that that's what Pope Leo XIV is going to be doing as well.
Yeah, and Cardinal Napier, as we wrap up, what do you think is sort of is the leader that the Catholic Church needs now, in as far as, and I say this for lack of a better word, ideology is concerned? There's a lot of debate now among people. Is he a centrist? Is he a liberal? Is he a conservative? Based on what you have assessed as an important member of the church, what kind of leadership does the church need right now? What direction does the church need to go towards?
You know, the last 4 popes that I've known, and I know this one as well, the last 4 popes, I'm just going to give you a summary of what I understood them to be the basic values that they held on to. John Paul II came from a communist background where his country was being persecuted. And his very strong message was, do not be afraid. Those are Jesus's words. And Jesus adds on, I'm with you always. Do not be afraid. So I think Pope Leo XIV is going to be very conscious of that there. Secondly, I believe Pope Benedict the XVI, when he chose to explain why he had taken the name Benedict, he also said there was one thing that was central to the life of Saint Benedict, and that was not to let anything come between you and Christ your Lord. And I'm sure that Pope Leo XIV is going to be very conscious of the centrality of Jesus in his life. The last one is Pope Francis. When he was summing up what a true disciple is, it's just a very simple, and it's very something that I think most Christians should have in their fingertips. Walk with Jesus, build up his church by your faith and your works, and be a witness to him, and show people that you actually know who Jesus is. That, I think, is going to be the basis of what Pope Leo XIV is going to be using for his ministry.
Cardinal Wilfred Napier, thank you so much for making time for us. That's the Archbishop Emeritus of Durban, who actually was part of the previous voting cardinals, joining us live as we reflect on the breaking news out of the Vatican City this evening. The Catholic Church has a new leader. Pope Leo Francis XIV will lead the church following the death of Pope Francis. We've been asking you the question of what you make of this development. You can send us an X or send us a WhatsApp voice notes. After the break, we'll continue reflecting on this breaking news. Stay with us here on Face the Nation. Welcome back. We continue our focus on the election of Pope Leo XIV. For more on this, we're joined in studio by Catholic priests. We've got Reverend Father Oupa Matseke, who is joining us here in studio. Father, thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We also have Father Kopano Mosala, who is at the Vatican City in Rome, in Italy, joining us on the line as well. Father Mosala, thank you so much for also making time. Good evening.
Hello, Clement. Thank you so much for having me, and greetings to Father Oupa, you, and all the viewers.
I want us to start with you, because you're there in Rome, in Italy. What's the atmosphere like? I mean, for a lot of Catholics, it's a moment of joy. It's a moment of pride that now there is a new pope that has been elected. What's the atmosphere like there, and how have you received the election of the new pope?
Certainly, Clement, thank you so much. The atmosphere really has been a wonderful atmosphere, because we are longing for this moment to have the new pope. So finally we got the new pope. But from the way or the place where I was sitting, the time it was announced, there was not so much joy as maybe you could have seen on TV. But perhaps the reason was the fact that, you know, people always have their own expectations in terms of whom do they want to become a pope. So, but after the pope had given his speech, the mood started changing, and we saw the joy now from the people coming in. So really, it has been a good moment. But from the beginning, it was a feeling of uncertainty. But once the Pope gave his speech, then all of a sudden the mood started to change, and people were so cheering, and they were so happy to be having their leader.
Yeah. Father Matseke, it's always an interesting moment when a new Pope is being announced, because as Father Musala says, people have their own hopes. In fact, before even the conclave, you see reports of who are the so-called quote-unquote favored. And you start wondering, okay, maybe it's these top three that the Pope is going to come from. What does this moment mean for the Catholics who may have been hoping for somebody else, but now this is their new leader?
Well, I'm hoping that it means that they believe now strongly in the gifts of the Holy Spirit, because we believe that the coming back of Peter into the back of Peter is granted us by the Holy Spirit, of course, through the power of God, through the Holy Spirit. So it always surprises us. We always have what we call the preferred ones, the preferities. You know, at this moment, there was one big name that was hovering around, the Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzaballa, the Latin Patriarch in Jerusalem. And many others, like the likes of Cardinal Peter Erdo and the rest. And we got a surprise. We got somebody from the Americans, and it's something to look forward to all the time. Whenever we experience the conclave, it's always that element of surprise that we look mostly forward to.
Father Musala, what is the next process then to follow? Now the election has happened, conclave has done its job. Now the new Pope has greeted Catholics. He has called for peace. He's spoken about love. He's paid tribute to the late Pope Francis. What then becomes the next step in as far as the Catholic processes are concerned?
The next step, as we might have read and heard, it will be the inauguration of the Pope, where he takes his seat in the cathedral. So there will be an inauguration of the Pope, which the day that will be given to us, so that he takes his seat now as the Pope of the Catholic Church. So there will be an inauguration of the Pope.
What does this mean for, I suppose, us as Africans, Father Matseke? There are some, we saw Pope Francis has visited the African continent. This is someone we knew who was a friend of the poor, someone who's always made his views clear about even wars that are happening across the world. Are we expecting, from what we know of Pope Leo the 14th, are we expecting him to take on from what's been left by the late Pope Francis, or is it someone who sort of has his own path, so to speak, from what we know of him?
Well, from what we know of him, he has highlighted that clearly his mission is to put front and forward the element of peace. You know, the mission of the church is to promote peace as Jesus had given it. My peace I give you, and I don't give it as the world gives it, and I give it to you as the Father has sent me. Now, Pope Francis was all about that agenda, looking towards the poor, because we can also look at the name of the Pope, Leo the 14th. He takes his name after Leo the 13th. Leo the 13th is known to have been the champion of social justice. And a Pope who advocated a lot to looking towards those who are less fortunate, who have got less than us, you know, to look towards them and to fight for their rights. And in his document, Rerum Novarum, he stretches that idea of looking towards those who have got nobody to actually help them. And this was somehow the mission of Pope Francis. Pope Francis taking a name of Francis, a simple man who wants to associate with the simple, you see. So I don't think the mission that he is going to to undertake is very far from the mission of Pope Francis. You know, it's a continuation. Of course, everybody, each and every one of us, we're unique. And in a special way, we would like to see the world as from our background or things like that. Now, he's unique. We are expecting different things here and there, but the mission of Pope Francis is not dying. You know, as other people who tend to be more conservative than very liberal, just in the middle, or more liberal for that matter. We're hoping that all that Pope Francis had labored for should be put aside, and then a new guy come in, and then everything starts afresh. We would be a church that is backward, that looks backward if it was like that. So I believe that the Holy Spirit had led the cardinals to elect this man so that he can elevate some of the aspects of the mission of Pope Francis, which we desperately need as a church. The aspect of peace is at the center of it, and we must be the advocates and those who promote peace at first and social justice.
Yeah. And Father Musala, how does Pope Leo XIV then unite the church? Because as Father Matseke says, there are some people who still hold dear to the conservative values of the church. There are some people who sort of embraced the liberal approach of Pope Francis and how he wanted an inclusive church. And you had those who are more, so-called centrists, so to speak. So when you come in like this as the new Pope, how big is that responsibility to also bring in people that may have hoped for someone who's more radical and more of a conservative, but you bring them together to understand that this is still one church?
And as Father Oba has said, that the church, we believe that the cardinals are led by the power of the Holy Spirit, and even this church is led by the power of the Holy Spirit. And so the understanding within the Catholic teaching is that the leader of the church is led or held by the power of the Holy Spirit in terms of governing. So we believe also that, the four marks of the church, that the church is one, Holy, Catholic, and Apostolic. Certainly means that what the Pope teaches also is led by the power of the Holy Spirit, and what he teaches also, we believe that it would have been what the church wants to convey or wants to give to the people. So to convince people, really, it's not the matter of convincing the people to believe in what the Pope is saying, but it's also the matter of faith that whoever is in charge is elected through the power of the Holy Spirit, and by then we believe in his teaching, because we will remember that when the Pope teaches in terms of the morality, sitting in the ex cathedra, the infallibility of the Pope, that the Pope he teaches without fault. So I think with those kind of teachings, it will help people to understand that what the Pope will be teaching or the message that he will be trying to convey is not necessarily his, but what the church is aiming to proclaim to the world.
Father Matseke, what are some of the critical issues you think are facing the Catholic Church right now that Pope Leo XIV will sort of have to attend to? And of course, many of the issues were attended to by Pope Francis, but the church has been evolving, and as you said, you don't want a church that goes backward, but a church that forges ahead. What are some of the issues that are confronting the church now that are going to be quite central and need to be addressed head on?
The first one is to strongly define what the Catholic faith is, because largely we have lost some of the definitions of the main tenets of the faith. People have started thinking that it's just a social system that exists like any other, like a charity organization of some sort. We still have a duty and a mandate to to teach people about Jesus Christ and the values that he stood for. And that's the first thing. And the second one is our actions, our action in social action. I think the Pope has to labor so much towards that, because I think Pope Francis wanted to actually define us like that. For an example, we would look at some of our forebears as Catholics who have championed some of the most difficult systems. Mother Teresa of Calcutta, who really looked towards the poor as brothers and sisters, in a way that if she helps them, she pours herself and the love of it. You see, there is no expected reward. It's a human duty to another human being, irrespective of the faith or whatever they're subscribing to. You see, so the church has to come out strongly in terms of those kinds of things, looking towards those who need a voice, you know, and who feel that there's nobody who speaks on behalf of them in terms of their rights and them as humans generally. So I believe that should be at the center of this papacy as well, to teach us, those who are teaching the faith, because priests, bishops, and the cardinal, and even himself as a pope, have a duty to teach the faith. Yeah.
Well, Father Matseke and Father Mosala, thank you so much for speaking to us on Face the Nation tonight. There are some tweets that have come through responding to, of course, the election of Pope Leo XIV. Rabotata says, Clement, as the Catholic myself, I congratulate the new Pope. The new must endeavor to transform the Church, particularly the role of women at the Vatican. Bono says, we can only wish him all the best. Hopefully, he will always preach about peace. Let's hope he will lead the Catholic Church with dignity it deserves. This is a historic moment. Avi says, warmest congratulations to the newly elected Pope. The world is in turmoil and we need more leaders with strong administrative skills. Pope Prevost, being an advocate for peace and love is in the world, and above all, his experiences suggest a balanced leadership approach. Thank you so much for your tweets. We'll be back after this. Welcome back. So the SAPS has exonerated its members who were part of the Presidential Protection Services who were charged for assaulting civilians back in 2023. This is the moment when it all happened. As you can see in this video, you can see the VIP protectors assaulting civilians in broad daylight. These are civilians that have been left traumatized. You can see them being beaten up and being kicked to the ground as well. Now, the Police and Prisons Civil Rights Union POPCRU has welcomed the acquittal of the 8 members of the Presidential Protection Unit for Deputy President Paul Mashatile, who assaulted those civilians on the N1. An internal disciplinary hearing has cleared the officers. For more on this story, we are joined by Thulani Ngwenya, who is the president of the Police and Prisons Civil Rights Union. Thulani, thank you so much for making time for us. Good evening.
Good evening, Clement,
so
and the viewers at home.
Yeah, as POPCRU, just talk to us about what your position has been here, because there seems to be some confusion. There are some people who are seeing your approach as if it's that is trying to shield the officers from accountability. What was your role as POPCRU in that internal process within the SAPS?
Thank you very much, Clement, and the viewers at home. Our approach was to make sure that internal processes as enshrined in the disciplinary code as well as the code of conduct is complied to the latter. We wanted to make sure that members got representation We wanted to make sure that SAPS complied with what they've signed in 2011 and 2012 and promulgated by Parliament as a regulation, which are the disciplinary code of the department. So that process has come in, and it has come out with a product that we are so happy that the department have managed to deal with this matter appropriately in terms of the processes, and we're happy with the outcome.
As POPCRU, though, do you condone the behavior of these police officers, how they acted in that video?
First thing, Clement, that it must be clear, is that you see the last part of the video. We never seen what causes the members to act on what they have acted on. We see only the last part. Everybody talks about the last part, of which now is the end of what makes them, because I don't think that ordinary normal police officials who are working on a VIP protection unit will just stop the car in the middle of the freeway without anything and start to do what they did. So if all of us would have been able to see what makes them to act in a manner that they have acted, then we will be speaking from the point of saying whether they were right, whether they were wrong. But the disciplinary hearing indicated that they were not wrong. That's why they were vindicated.
So I want to understand this then, Thulani, because my understanding is, I mean, even in police protocols, nothing gives the police the right to go and assault civilians, whether those civilians had conducted themselves in an illegal manner or not. So if you know what happened before this incident, maybe you can share that with us. But even if these civilians were refusing to move from the road, or they were making gestures that may have been seen as illegal, where in police protocols does this behavior become justified, where as a police officer you can go and attack someone like that and beat them and shove them to the ground when they are not even armed? Is that what police officers are expected to do in response to any scenario they might come across?
Clement, these members are trained members to protect the client. That's the first thing that you must understand. And their client is the second highest office in the land, which is the deputy president. You can go in any other country. In any other country, the work of the protection service and the entourage that leads the president or the deputy president or those who are given that responsibility to protect the client, their responsibility and their mandate is to make sure that, firstly, their client must be safe. That is number one. Two is to deal with any other risk that is associated to that. And remember that the deputy president don't drive with only one car. It drives with a motorcade. So now, if that motorcade saw a risk to the deputy president, if it happens that something happened to the deputy president, what will be the response of the community? They will say police are reckless, they don't know what they are doing, they don't even able to protect citizens that are supposed to protect, and therefore they will be blamed. When police act in terms of ensuring that their client and the people that they are protecting, and also the civilian don't respect the law, that when you see police coming, because they don't just come out of the blue, they come from a long distance, showing that we are driving a motorcade, we are protecting somebody who are on the fast lane. People just ignore it.
Okay, so Thulani, to be clear then, so next time, to be clear then, people that are watching us right now must know that the next time they disrespect police officers or they refuse to move from the road, the police officers who are protecting these top politicians are going to come out of their vehicles and they're going to shove them to the ground, they're going to beat them up and assault them and kick them to the ground. So that's what you think we must expect, because you think that's how you demonstrate care and caution when you are protecting a top politician. So as I leave the office today, when I drive down and I somehow don't respect the VIP protectors, I must know that they're going to come and kick me to the floor and beat me up. That should be the expectation.
Clement, let's agree, me and you, when you go and took a driver's license, when you take a driver's license, you are told that first thing that you must be aware of are the other road users. That's number one. Number two, they always tell you, give the right of way of any emergency vehicle that is driving on the road. The narrative that is being dragged, that police just as if there are people that are thinking, I don't think it's a correct narrative. When I started, Clement, I said to you, if we've seen what made the police to act in a manner that they have acted, maybe we'll be talking another story. But we draw conclusion out of the latter part where police are acting. What happened? What makes them? Why are we not worried to say what makes them to do this?
I've asked you to share that with us.
Share that with us. All over.
What happened? Share that with us. What is it that was so devastating to these police officers that they felt, we're going to stop this vehicle, we're going to get them out of the car, we're going to kick them while they're on the floor and beat them up when they are unarmed? What did they do?
It means the manner they drove, it was a threat.
Why didn't they arrest them?
You're on the. Oh yeah, they were not supposed to. They were supposed to remove them from the threat. They must remove the threat.
Yeah. So why not arrest them? Arresting them actually removes them as a threat. You handcuff them, you put them, you call for backup, you take them to the police station. Why are they not doing that?
Maybe we need to go through the mandate as to how to deal with the threat. Remember, these are protectors. These are police officials. They need to make sure that you don't leave your client unattended.
But they left the client unattended and went to beat up civilians.
No, it's only one car that is standing there.
So why didn't they arrest them?
Where are the other cars?
Why didn't they arrest them then? Because the other cars had left.
It also poses a threat to the other members that they are going. Their job is to make sure that they escort the client up to the place where they are supposed to come. Where they're supposed to arrive.
So in that mandate?
That is their job.
Because I've looked at the mandate. I've never seen anything that says if people disrespect you or they don't move on their own, as a VIP officer, you must come out and beat them up and kick them to the floor. I've not seen anything like this. Where in the mandate of VIP protectors does it say when they refuse to leave, to move from the road, they do a ZEP sign, whatever the case is, get out, beat them up, shove them to the floor and kick them? Where does it say that?
But Clement, let us not focus on the latter part that to say they've kicked them and not. What makes the police first to stop? Let's deal with that question. What makes them to stop?
Thulani Ngwenya, thank you so much for making time for us. That's the president of the Police and Prison Civil Rights Union. Let's now bring in Ian Cameron. Ian Cameron is the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Police. And as the Democratic Alliance, they're actually calling for transparency into the SAPS internal investigation that led to the acquittal of these VIP protectors. The party has now submitted a promotion of access application to obtain the record, the decision, and the acquittal of the officers. Ian, thank you so much for making time for us. I mean, I don't know how to feel after having spoken to a union that represents police officers, and clearly it's condoning their violent behavior, because we are told as civilians that if you don't move on the road, basically the police have carte blanche to just come out and kick you and beat you up, and they can just shove you to the floor.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the first speaker was chasing his tail in this case. It's really bad to hear that we've got union representatives that are meant to ensure fair labor practices that now act as though they're quasi-criminal lawyers. In this specific matter, it was already found in court in 2024 that the video footage was admissible and can be used as evidence. Now, it's very interesting because what I could find out so far from the so-called report of this whole process was that the unions brought quite a bit of doubt around the video footage. So this tells me that they are willing to act in direct contradiction of any court of law. And what bothers me even more when I listen to this union rep is that they clearly do not understand the procedure. And let me share this with you, Clement, because it's important. If there's any kind of threat on a deputy president or the president, there would be some kind of counter assault. Now, he wrongly says that there was only one vehicle. There were at least 3 to 4 vehicles parked there, form part of a motorcade of a minimum of 8 vehicles, excluding the Metro Police vehicles, part of the escort. So there was no reason for them to act in the way they did. Now, who in their right mind would use a little polo, be unarmed, to threaten a motorcade of over 9 vehicles? There's so many things that I can poke holes in the story with. It simply doesn't make sense. No incident was reported, no crime was reported, no crime scene was identified, and so the list goes on. It's extremely concerning.
You've submitted a Promotion of Access to Information Act application now to obtain the record decision and reasons for the acquittal. What are you hoping to gain from that access to the report? And once you have it, will you be considering perhaps challenging? Is it even possible to challenge an internal disciplinary report?
Yes, I think I have to flip between 2 hats here. It could be seen as controversial, but from a portfolio committee point, I think we need to certainly question the process. He speaks of certain regulations. Now, all of the regulations you read certainly do not create the impression that you should be protecting criminal conduct. Now, I challenge these members to challenge me for saying that that is criminal conduct. From a Access to Information Act application that we have now done on a political side, it will guide us as to what our next steps are, and we will obviously consider the relevant legal remedies. Luckily, these 8 persons or suspects or accused are now appearing in court at the beginning of June, and hopefully we'll see a more favorable outcome through a court of law. But this certainly doesn't make sense, especially not in a democratic country.
What do you make of the response of the National Police Commissioner? He says he still needs to study the report. When was this report finalized?
Well, Clement, the way you ask the questions, you should actually be the advocate facilitating the questions in the procedure, because you're exactly right. This report was already finalized on the 7th of April. That's more than a month ago. Now, what's interesting about this from a portfolio committee point of view, we've asked the police about this at least 3 times, officially inquired about it, and every time they said they would keep us posted. We found out about this because Action Society, an NGO, non-profit organization, launched a PIA application about the procedure and how far it is at. And that letter then indicated that the procedure had been finalized on the 7th of April. So clearly, it wasn't being monitored correctly by the relevant persons. And that also tells me that there's no central coordination point at the moment in the South African Police Service when it comes to these kinds of serious offences. So obviously we need to zoom in on far more policy, operating procedure and general regulation matters as well, and not only the specific incident, because it tells me that generally speaking, from a management point of view, we're missing the ball.
Ian Cameron, thank you so much for making time for us. He's the chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Police and also the DA spokesperson on police. Thanks to you for watching the Thursday edition of Face the Nation. We'll be back with you on Tuesday next week at 8 p.m. Have a good evening. Cheers.